Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/From the Shadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host Shane Grove, and deep in the bowels of the From the Shadows studio is with me is the Judge. What's up, Judge?
Hey, I'm awesome. I'm glad to be here.
You're awesome. You're glad.
Well, I tell you, I was sick there for about a month, and now I'm.
So you're feeling good.
Oh, I feel strong like bull.
Strong like bull. Okay.
I do.
All right. And speaking of bull, Jason, the producer, is with us.
Greetings, everybody. You can't pay attention to what your host is saying half of the time. Only get him a quarter of the time.
Look, some people don't pay any attention to what the host is saying.
True.
And some people
This may be a little bit of foreshadowing that there's going to be some serious funk groove going on.
Oh.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed.
So joining us on today's episode is a very, very, probably one of our most accomplished guests, I would say, as far as researching.
Well, I would say based upon his curriculum vitae, I would say he has an unbelievable amount of experience in such a diverse background of the supernatural, the paranormal. I mean, you name it, he can talk about it, which is rare. I mean, a lot of them, we got a lot of great guests who have specialized knowledge, but I think Christopher, he may be the cherry on top of this Sunday when it comes to asking me anything.
Okay. Well, with that introduction,
I put a lot of pressure on
he
him.
may want to hang up. So joining us is Christopher O'Brien. Christopher, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm waiting for 2 feet of snow here tonight.
Ooh,
oh boy,
yes. We feel for you. It's just gonna miss us here in Ohio.
Well, it's got we're center of the bullseye here on top of Tillman Hill, which is the highest point in the county, and we can have an inch or two of snow up here, and we go down to the bottom of our driveway and it's rain. So we're hoping.
So tell our listeners where you're at.
I'm on the southern tier, just over the border of Pennsylvania in New York. We're about 45 minutes west of Binghamton, and about 2 hours from the Ohio border. Right above the border with between New York and Pennsylvania. It's called the Southern Tier. We are going to get slammed tonight, and it's going to be, cool. I like snow. Of course, I lived many years in Colorado, and I've seen my share of snowfall. I've waited for snowplows to come and rescue me and, give me a way to get to the next town. So it's not that big of a deal, but It's that time of year.
This is old
you know,
hat for you, man.
This is not
grandmother's
14 inches.
grandmother's
I'm not even
house
sure you
we
get the
go.
snow shovel out, do you?
well, being snowed in, being in places where you get that much snow, it affords you a lot of time to. That's why you've written so many books, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's good point. No one's ever actually thought about that, but yeah, this is the time of year when I do most of my writing. Of course, during the warmer months, I'm out and about doing investigative work and research, and I was a tour guide for many years out of Sedona, Arizona. I'm one of the few people you'll ever meet that has been to Grand Canyon National Monument or National Park almost 600 times. I did quite a bit of exploring around the Four Corners region, and spent 13 years in Colorado San Luis Valley, probably our our paranormal Disneyland for the continent. And I spent quite a bit of time logging a lot of miles on my truck, 300,000 in 6 years, and wrote 3 books about my investigative work, and then have gone on to broaden my horizons and look at things from all sorts of perspectives.
You make a great guest because, we named our podcast From the Shadows because, we believe there's a lot of things in the shadows and we like to bring them to light. But what a cool life that you must have. We had Nick Redfern on here, and Nick wrote a book. Him and 2 guys
wrote a book. Nick's written 51 books.
Yeah, but he wrote one particular book.
We only talked about one.
But he wrote this book about him and 2 buddies. They drove all over the country in an RV,
right,
investigating different paranormal hotspots, more cryptozoology than anything.
Yeah.
But I thought, what an awesome life that you could just drive around and go to pubs. Yeah. And Nick, I think, enjoys the spirits, if you know what I mean, and not the ones that go.
Oh yeah.
But what an awesome thing. So I'm a little jealous and envious of you that we have a passion for the material, that you've got a life that you get to go out and do investigatory work on a regular basis and go to places that people who are listening to our show have never been, would love to go. I've never even been to the Grand Canyon, flew over it. Doesn't count. But so tell us this. Let's start off with, how on earth did you get the ability to do this? I mean, there's most of our listeners say I'd love to do that, but how do you do it? I got a job. I got to pay my mortgage. How does this happen?
Tell me about it.
A charmed life is the question.
Well, let's put it this way. I imbibed in evening extenders when it was, absolutely necessary. I mean, I could not have done some of the investigative work that I did without the help of cocaine. And that was just for driving, to get myself hundreds and hundreds of miles back to where I needed to be.
I think Rick James would agree with you on that point.
Yeah, Rick James.
Well, in terms of going out and talking to ranchers and doing investigative work and all that, all the hard nuts and bolts stuff, no, I was not on any sort of, substances or alcohol or anything like that. You have to be really, really professional, and you have to be really together. But when I was in a band, man, I was gigging. I was driving from Casper, Wyoming, all the way down the Rockies to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and working construction to make money. And those 2 things, I had to squeak out that little bit of slack in order for me to answer the phone calls, go out on site visits to ranches and locations where events were being reported. And because we had such a wave of activity going on, I mean, I licked the tip of the iceberg. I so many reports, hundreds and hundreds of reports went by that I did not have the time as a single human being to cover, and work construction and play in a band and log all this material, which eventually ended up being my first two books, Mysterious Valley, Enter the Valley. And so, I admit, when there were times when I would, do the diet pills and maybe a couple of lines of really bad blow and, some ski town or something. Yeah, to get my ass back home. There were a number of times where I would pull over, with all my gear at 3:34 in the morning, and then wake up with a start and almost have a heart attack, thinking I was still driving when I'd actually pulled over to sleep for a while so that I could get my ass back home. I put 300,000 miles on my truck in 6 years. Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, let that sink in.
Not if you're a
Let that
full-time
sink
truck
in.
driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't hauling anything but ass.
So what you're telling us, Christopher, is you had this passion for the paranormal, but you love playing in a band, and you had to work construction in order to pay the bills.
No, I had the band was the only way I
You didn't
made.
want to sacrifice those things, so you did what you had to do.
No. Wait a minute. The band was the only way I made money in the winter.
Oh, okay, because you couldn't work construction during the winter.
Right, exactly. Who's going to work at 20 below? I was hanging my ass out on the line, going up and playing Leadville at 10,000 feet and, booking that for the week of Christmas. I mean, we went through 3 blizzards on 3 freaking mountain passes, at the top of America, just to do 2 gigs.
That's
So,
craziness.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was younger then, I was.
Yeah, the roads up there
I
at
was wild and
Leadville in the
crazy.
winter are almost impassable, aren't they?
No, they got great plow crews, man. In
I'm not
Park
driving
County.
to go right over the guardrail, 5,000 feet
No,
drop.
no, it comes with the territory. That's why I really love Colorado, and I wish my lungs were better. I'd be there right now.
So what were you investigating back then? If you want to tell the listeners, like what it was that you were.
Anything that did not, that was strange, didn't make sense. Aberrant social behavior, weird weather, anomalous weather events, weird crime, occult crime, strange synchronistic events that would tie all those things together, and then there'd be UFO sightings all over. Bigfoot would show up. Weird elementals, the Fae, diminutive beings. It was a kaleidoscope of activity that occurred, and I meticulously documented all my research and all my investigative work. And I had, some pretty high-powered people helping me, and, I got involved in documenting what I consider to be personally probably the most well-documented and most intense documented wave of anomalous activity in North American history. I can't think of anybody else that has a database that looks at only 6 years, especially the 6 years between 1993 and 1999. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reports of all different kinds, cryptozoological, weird, obviously UFO reports, a couple hundred cattle mutilations. You could just go down the line, weird haunted site events that happen, aberrant social behavior, weird weather events.
So the interesting thing is, standalone, all those things in and of themselves, pretty cool. But did you start to find that there was a nexus that connected these things?
Absolutely. Great.
Because you talked about
Great.
synchronicity. So
Great
I'm
question.
dying to
Yes.
hear how all this stuff
Yes.
connects.
Yeah. I mean, it was obvious to me once I got the network of sources established, your local newspaper editors and reporters, law enforcement, sheriffs, deputies, dispatchers at police stations and sheriff's departments, well positioned ranchers, who were had stature in their community, and farmers. Farmers, not so much, they were more conservative, but the ranching community, when they started losing their cattle, they became some of my best sources of information and of, event data. You have to be able to be in a place where people trust you because you have, number one, a local phone number, number two, a reputation of not, violating requests for anonymity. And when people want people to know who, was reporting this, you would credit your sources. Whenever a rancher, had military helicopters associated with, a mutilation case on his ranch or neighboring ranchers, they tended to come out and be patriotic and say, hey, what's going on? Why am I or my neighbors being victimized by my government? The assumption being that
The assumption that the helicopters were mutilating the cattle.
right, because they were seen in conjunction with the, maybe not right during the mutilation, but the day before, the day after, sometimes the same night. If people wanted me to, give them the credit to, take the mic and say their piece, you're darn right, So credit your sources, honor all requests for anonymity, and make sure you have a well briefed network of sources, people that understand what you're looking for and what you don't want to see or hear in terms of their report. I need these things. Boom, 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 boom. Depending on the type of event. These people were briefed. Many of them were trained observers, a lot of ex-military, especially law enforcement. These people would call me. I had one guy that would send me, typed out military intelligence style reports of stuff that he was witnessing, which, I mean, I didn't have to do a thing, It was like, whoa. I learned a few things, actually. And then really important. Dr. Lynn Weldon, who was the head of the sociology department at Adams State University, was really instrumental early on in training me and teaching me and coaching me on how to properly interview people, how to properly document information, what facts are you looking at, why do you want those facts, how do you set them up into a database that then you could go back and analyze. This was
with that amount of data, that would be the key right there.
Well, I have the largest database of unusual events that have 10 points of data. I think maybe Jenny Randall's has a few more from the Southern Colorado Basin and this San Fernando Valley. Maybe she's probably got about the same as me, at least 1,000 events. But if I logged every story that Grandma told the family, or things with no date, no time, not really sure exactly where it happened, all that stuff got thrown out. The only thing that got saved into the database had all those 10 points of data ticked off. And I really, but I'm not a scientist by any stretch, but I paid attention during my science classes, and how to properly enact the scientific method. I have some incredible mentors who have helped me through the years. I'm very fortunate. But you can't go into this as a debutante weekend warrior. It doesn't work. I don't care if it's going into haunted sites, if it's doing crypto work, if it's doing ufological work. God forbid you should be lassoed by a dead cow. If you're going in to do these types of cases, you can't be someone who's going in there and you're there because you want to be blown away. You want to, like, whoa, this is, I can't wait to tell everybody about this next week at my local Zoom party. I guess we're in a new age now. So I went into this because I was an experiencer. I don't really want to go. We don't have enough time to go into it, but I had an experience when I was 7 that proved to me that we're not alone. There was no communication. I saw no craft, but I did see entities. It absolutely was like a Sharpie in my mind. It's one of the most vivid memories I have. And I've always known that our reality contains other residents. And I've just been, totally fascinated by the concept since I was very, very young. And I'm kind of bright. I'm smart. I have a library of several thousand books, and I've read most of them twice or 3 times or 4 times. The good ones, 5 even.
So you've mentioned the fact that when you had this experience, it's what basically got you into looking at it more scientifically. So you don't just go there and witness for the wow factor of it. You actually do scientific methods and try to prove or disprove what it is that you're going to investigate at the time. As I mentioned, you keep a database of some of the strange things that have happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that sounds really good. Real cool.
Well, the strange things that happened that had 10 points of data.
Okay. Yeah.
All the other stuff, I noted it and I wrote it down, and I've, got records of a lot of it, but that didn't make the database.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard some incredible stories from really good, reputable sources, but they didn't know the date. They didn't know the time. I need that. I need to have, be able to fix that event in a place, in time, and hopefully corroborate it. Have other witnesses. Obviously, that's the journalistic standard is to have two corroborating sources. So I went to college. I had 121 credits for 118 credit degree, and never bothered to do my math courses, so I didn't graduate. But I taught at Adams State University for 7 years. I was a guest lecturer, so I'm a pretty bright guy. I know to be, for instance, just to give you an example, to have an understanding of the most complex of all paranormal mysteries, without question, nothing even comes close to the cattle mutilation mystery. Nothing comes close.
Right.
And to have an ability to have a discussion about it with myself and David Perkins and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 other people in the world, you have to know, and I could start ticking off over a dozen scientific disciplines to have a working knowledge of all these different disciplines to even engage in a conversation about the only blood-based paranormal phenomenon that conveniently leaves behind thousands of pounds of physical evidence. That to me, that's a sword and a stone. That's the what's the Excalibur, to me.
Right.
That if you can figure that out, you can figure everything else out. That's the key to figuring out the UFO phenomenon. The UFO phenomenon is the key to figure out our kind of blind spot in terms of what is human consciousness. We still don't know what human consciousness is, and that is the ultimate, to me, the ultimate riddle. That's the Gordian knot that I wish I was Alexander with my sword, that I could just cleave it, in two and break the knot. Once we figure out consciousness, everything else will be will fall right into place. But I'll say it again: the cattle mutilation mystery is the quincunx, or the answer to what UFOs are, and UFOs will give us our answer to the nature of consciousness.
Well, essentially, the cattle mutilation is you're right. It's the one mystery that always leaves behind evidence, like crop circles.
Exactly.
Crop circles and cattle mutilations. Well, you have the crop circles, you have the cattle mutilation, and with the cattle mutilations, from what I've read, and it's a very cursory understanding of it, is that you have precision cuts, you have unexplained, methodology, that there's no way a wild animal could have done this, and you start thinking, well, there's thousands and thousands of these things,
organ removal.
I get it. It's one of those things. You figure that out, we're going to figure probably a lot of stuff out. So one of the big topics that's out there today, it's on Amazon Prime, it's in and things like that, is the topic of Skinwalker Ranch.
Right. We were supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, we got some listeners out there that are really interested in Skinwalker Ranch. So,
yeah. Well.
And it sounds like to me you could give us 5 hours of details. But for the casual listener out there who wants to know about what the hell this is.
Okay. Well, number one, why are you asking me this? Well, I was the very first one that found out about the case from out, very first investigator from outside of the Uinta Basin. In other words, prior to my hearing about the case, which would have been in late June or early July 1996, when Terry Sherman and Gwen and her kids still were there, before the article that came out in the Deseret News that exploded in the realm of, the paranormal. I mean, the Zach Van X article everybody was blown away when it happened. And that was, I think, the first week of July 1996. Well, before the article was released, Zach called me up and introduced himself and said, hey, we have a mutual friend, and I understand that you've been involved with some investigative work there in Colorado that's, very similar to this weird ranch that I'm going to, publish this big, extensive article about. And he told me, some of the things that, have now become very famous. The bulls in the trailer, and the wolf, and he rattled off some real quick thumbnail sketches, and he said, "Look, I don't know of anybody that I can recommend this guy talk to." He asked me, who he should talk to for some help. And he said, well, I know about your work, but would you be interested in helping this guy? And I said, yeah, I would, even though I was only investigating cases in the San Luis Valley in Colorado. I had my perfect Petri dish. I was going to just focus on that. And this is the only case that drew me outside of the valley. just as an aside. So he said, well, could you give this guy a call? So I called him up, and, we had a long, very involved conversation. He told me a lot of stuff. I wrote copious notes. And he said, well, I'd really like to talk to you more, but I got to go out and do my chores and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, are you going to be around this weekend? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm on my way. So got in the old truck with my friend Art and my brother Brendan and the faithful canine investigator Cato, the Pyrenees. And probably the hottest day of the year, we drove up there. It was 104, 105 in the shade all day. I spent the entire afternoon just sitting and listening to Terry, thinking, wow, I can't wait to have a relationship with this guy, investigate this case, figure out a way to get, some equipment on the ground. He blew me away. And I have a technique that I use. If it's a big case, I normally don't have any visible recording equipment. I'll jot notes down, but I won't record anything. And I will not ask to see evidence. I want them to offer to show me evidence on the very first, face-to-face meeting. That's just how I am. Most people go in there and show me your videos, show me this, or what about this, what about that? That's not how you investigate these things. You go there, you sit very quietly, and you do a little neuro-linguistic programming. You kind of mirror the witness. You sort of put him at ease in his situation and allow him to open up. And so that's what I did, thinking this is going to be the beginning of a very amazing investigative process, co-mutual. And 2 weeks later, Robert Bigelow bought the place. I actually gave Terry Bigelow's number, also the number for Lawrence Rockefeller, because he had asked me, I need to have some people come in here and study what's going on here, but they got to pay me, so that I can get my investment back out of it. And he was asking less, if I remember, less than what he paid to get in there. He just wanted to get the fuck out. He was in fear for his family's safety. I totally did not get any hint of subterfuge or lying or hoaxing or anything like that. It was a pristine investigative environment. I saw, readily apparent physical evidence of to back up his claims of objects landing out in his field, shearing off the tops of his cottonwood trees. I saw the evidence. He says, yeah, we got these, it's like a camera, you know how a camera, when you open up the aperture, it has a spinning thing that opens up? He says, well, one of them things opens up in the air right out here above my pasture. And it's about 40, 50 feet wide. And I've looked through and seen a whole different reality. It's been, dusk, and I've seen like morning or afternoon sunlight, blue sky and clouds, through the aperture. And I'm going, wow. And I said, well, when was the last time this happened? He goes, well, I don't know. The last time I saw it happen was a couple of weeks ago. And he says, usually when these apertures open up, these triangles, they're about 30, 40 feet. They come floating out, and then they zip off from there. But this guy must have been a rookie, quote unquote. He must have been a rookie because he came shooting through, and he didn't stop fast enough, and he sheared off the tops of my cottonwood trees over there. And we went down there, and sure enough, there were branches from the tops of his 60, 70-foot trees did a line on the ground, sheared off. I mean, like a blunt force trauma. And, they were just at the point of, the leaves were all brown and everything, but you could tell it had been a couple, 3 weeks before. And then he said, yeah, the triangles, they land out here. He says, and they're heavy. He says, I have a friend of mine that got a guy from the oil fields to come up here, and his job is to figure out if heavy equipment can be set up on ground. And so they do these tests to find out, if the ground can take a certain amount of tonnage. And he said that he came out and these 14-inch diameter pod marks were pressed into the ground to the hard pan, that they had to have been 9 tons, or about the size and weight of or the weight of a railroad car. And so there were sets of these tripod markings. I didn't see them all.
Now, did this guy telling the story, did he think it was UFOs, or did he think it was United States Air
He
Force
had no idea.
Okay.
But did he at least think it was landing gear for whatever kind of...
He did not venture any explanations. All he did was tell me facts. He didn't say, well, I think it must have been this. No. When he told me about the 7-foot guys in robes with big bushy beards talking in weird languages and stuff, I mean, he told me some weird stuff. Wow. Weird stuff that I haven't seen in coverage of the case. So I've been keeping certain facts, back. I haven't shared certain things that he told me on that particular that one time that I had a face-to-face interview with him. Now, even though Bigelow jumped in and got involved 2 or 3 weeks later, or a month later, I was talking to him routinely on the phone, and the famous incident that happened when the blue balls dimmed his farm lights, checked out his horse, and then checked his wife out, and then zipped off out into the woods, and his 3 dogs went chasing after it. And then the next morning, he found the 3 grease piles. That's a pretty famous incident. I was on the phone with Terry when that happened. I wrote notes live, like I was...
That's like winning the lottery right there, right? Is this...
Well, at the time I didn't think so. I was, I was concerned about,
I mean, you're the guy that is in the trenches at the very first Skinwalker Ranch stories. You're the guy.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, the proverbial Johnny on the spot literally, when this is breaking news, you're the guy.
Well, in the mutes, when they found the weird metallic objects and stuff, I was pretty privy to a lot of interesting stuff. The one thing that I found out about pretty quickly. I wasn't involved, the same day, but the case of the calf that got mutilated with Terry and Gwen right there in the field when it happened.
Well, do tell.
Well, that's again, the most famous cattle mutilation event in terms of elapsed time, the shortest elapsed time. Terry and Gwen were out checking their newborn calves who were out with their mamas, and this would have been in I don't know, probably February, March. I'd have to check my notes, but they were going out and checking on them to make sure they were okay. I think they were inoculating some and putting ear tags on, that sort of thing. And they went to this one mama and their baby, and they did their thing, and then they went on to the next one, which is about 300 or 400 yards away, with no obstructions in the same pasture. And they went ahead and did their thing. And some people say it was 10, 15 minutes. Other people say 20, half hour. But however long it was, within sight. of the previous mama and baby. They went back, and as they were driving by, they noticed that the baby was on the ground, and it appeared to be deflated. And they went, and the thing had been eviscerated and was mutilated with no blood anywhere. And they immediately called Bigelow, and Bigelow had a microbiologist, a veterinary pathologist, and I forget, George Knapp, I think, was there, and there was somebody else that flew up on Bigelow's private plane, if I remember correctly, and were there within 3 hours. And they did a complete examination of the site and the animal, which is practically still warm. And they found evidence of sharp implements and of teeth.
Teeth. Oh.
Yeah. That's one thing that you never hear from all the people, that talk about this case. There was evidence that totally negated every theory that you can come up with. There was evidence to negate it, which is why
about that very issue. Because and I'm not someone that's well versed in the Skinwalker Ranch lore at all. But when you brought up the fact that there's evidence of teeth, is there lore with Skinwalker Ranch that they're large animals with piercing red eyes, and then people have shot them?
Yeah.
And they're completely unscathed. They're like some sort of spirit creature.
Yeah. A number of stories, including a giant dire wolf that came and tried to drag one of Terry's calves through the fence, through the gate, and he walked right up to it. I mean, it was within feet of it, and blasted it with I think a 357, if I remember correctly. I hit it with several slugs, and it didn't phase it. And then I think his son brought out a 30-06, and he shot it, and according to the original description of the site, a piece of flesh flew out of the wolf when the 357 or when the 30-06 rifle hit it, and it ran off, and they went chasing after it, and after so many hundreds of yards, they lost it in along the creek, if I remember. But the thing, I mean, they were within feet of it.
Yeah, that's just crazy. And this thing, in Skinwalker Ranch, correct me if I'm wrong on this. My memory
No, Terry didn't tell me that story, by the way. Terry never told me that story when I first visited him. And that supposedly happened the day he moved in. He was moving his animals onto the ranch when that happened. And he never mentioned that to me.
And Skinwalker Ranch is only about, 512 acres?
Yeah.
It's not that big. I mean, I think that we think of Utah and we think this ranch is thousands of acres, but I mean, we're in Ohio.
No. Well, no.
That big.
Yeah. Well, this is different. In the desert, especially in a place like the Uinta Basin, anytime you have flowing water, I mean, life, it's like the Nile in Egypt. Life springs up right around it. And, there's a creek, and then you have Bottle Hollow Reservoir that's right there. And so there are areas that are kind of green belts, where you have viable grazing, areas where you can, throw some farming together and stuff. And so, there's kind of ribbons all throughout the region where you have that. And this is one of those areas, but the Indians have for an indeterminate amount of time the Uinta Basin Ute Indians have called this a taboo spot, and the tribe is not allowed to live there or go there. And so, that gets into a bunch of an area of research that I really, ever since Bigelow bought the place, I really kind of lost my, being the only case that I ever really looked into outside of the valley. I lost interest. I didn't really do the kind of digging that I would normally do. But based on what other people have dug up, the area is a taboo area. And supposedly it's where the Navajo Skinwalker resides. It was cursing the Utes for helping the U.S. government and the Army subjugate the Navajo back in the 1870s and stuff. And, it sounds great for a screenplay, but, I'd like to see, some sort of historical documentation of this. And I've never seen any. I've never even seen documentation that the Utes aren't supposed to go there. It's interesting. It's surrounded by the Ute Indian reservation, and it's owned by Anglos, but by whites. So I mean that has some.
The interesting thing about it is that it's not just. It's not just. Oh, it's some ufology. Maybe there's some UFO. I mean, it's just everything. I mean, it just is one of those things.
I want to hear more about the guys with the big bushy beards and the robes. That's
weird.
Yeah, what exactly were they?
7 foot. He said at minimum, these were big dudes. I don't know, and the weird voices that he and the family would hear that sounded like they were speaking right above their heads, and it was a language they couldn't recognize and didn't sound like any Earth language that they'd ever heard. He says, I have no idea what language it was, and but you have to go back in time and look at the work of Junior Hicks, who was the regional investigator that checked the case out early on, and also Frank Salisbury. Both of those guys were teachers in local high schools. Frank, I think, ended up teaching at the college or university. Frank wrote a book called The Great Utah UFO Display, which I recommend highly. Junior was his lead investigator. They covered stuff from the late 60s all the way in through the 80s. All in that Uinta Basin region, where the ranch is kind of in the heart of it. And there's been a lot of really interesting reports that have come out of there. Everything from like pristine, brand new gold coins that are found on a trail, and somebody picks it up, and when it's in their hand, it tarnishes, it becomes kind of old. It goes from being brand new and newly struck to becoming an ancient coin just by picking it up. I mean, weird stuff, but really believable because of the quality of the investigative work, quality of the witnesses, and obviously you have to suspend your disbelief on some of the stuff. But I know good work when I see it, and when I see science teachers and stuff going out and really putting in the kind of work that I did, and even then some. I appreciate that. It's the Great The Great Utah UFO Display by Frank Salisbury, and Junior Hicks was instrumental in the book coming out. Junior, we just lost him. He was, I think, almost 100. We just lost him here a while back. Really sweet guy. I mean, amazing. A friend of mine has several hours of interview footage, video footage with him that, he didn't grant that to many people. And so
what was, now did you personally witness anything unusual at the Skinwalker?
At the I didn't when I went up there the first time to meet Terry, and I was hoping to establish a long and fruitful investigative relationship. Bigelow his non-disclosure agreement kind of after about a month of, after I'd been up there in August, September, then, Terry couldn't talk to me. But I went back up there in 2013 with Ty Ventura, Jesse Ventura's son, and Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son. They were doing the third season of Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy Theory, and I went up there. I helped from the very first meeting produce a segment on the Skinwalker Ranch, and we had pretty interesting, lights in the sky type stuff, but low level, low to the ground, and did not conform to any conventional potential conventional traffic, aerial or on the ground. It was unusual according to my interpretation of the events, and we have weird. We're getting these weird broadcasts, these blipverts of mechanical voices that were coming through our radios. That it was kind of weird. And when I say radio, I mean the radio in your car, not like walkie-talkies, but the actual radio in the car would be interrupted, and these mechanical voices were coming through, which I thought was noteworthy.
I would say, yes, I would say so.
Yeah, all you have to do is look it up it's on YouTube. Just go Jesse Ventura, Skinwalker Ranch. What? Oh, cool, man. Thank you.
So,
all right.
So other than UFOs, cattle mutilations, giant dire wolves, large 7-foot bearded men, anything else that is just crazy unusual that would be in this petri dish of paranormal?
You mean there in Fort Duchesne? You mean at the ranch?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, at the ranch.
Like
I've read accounts of the orbs being present there.
Oh, those are nightly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Jason, come on. Come with your good stuff.
Yeah, they basically 3 dogs chased the orbs and became grease spots as a result of it.
Oh man.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: Skinwalker Ranch. If somebody said, "Hey, listen, I want to jump in my motorhome and drive out there and try to see some of this stuff," is there land in which you can park and camp on within a reasonable distance if somebody wanted to do that to see if they could observe something?
Or you can watch TV.
Well,
there's a TV show right now.
Yeah,
I've always
firsthand, man.
When somebody asks me that, I kind of remind them that there's a certain technique known as a red herring. It's like the magician. He wants you to look at at his right hand, and the left hand is the thing doing the tricks. Skinwalker Ranch, like Area 51, I could come up with several examples, is like a red herring. They put that out there, and all the information is there for people to be focusing there. And the real stuff is going on, as far as I'm concerned, down in the Bookcase Cliffs, down around the gas and oil fields, out towards Baxter Pass, which is at the southeastern corner of the Uinta Basin. There's stuff going on at the southwestern corner of the basin, kind of down that triangle between the Green River and I-70 and Sago Canyon, that area down there. People often tell me, well, keep your eyes to the sky. And the first thing I do when I hear that is I put my ear to the ground. Because if they want you to look to the right, I turn around and look to the left. And, to me, it's important to identify cultural trends of awareness. And automatically assume the opposite. Okay, that's a little clue for any aspiring investigators out there.
So what do you think then? Like, who is behind some of the stuff that may be, or what are they trying to hide that's going on, that they're telling you to look at the sky and you got your ear, you were going to put your ear to the ground?
Well, no, I meant that more as a cultural sort of coincidental, just sort of everyday life throws you all sorts of, uninterpreted signals. And when it comes to this type of work, the unintended part starts to become programmed, and you start to realize that certain currents in the synchronistic energy flow, for lack of a better term, these currents, once you're getting closer to really finding out some cool stuff, they tend to reward you and draw you forward with coincidence and with meaningful coincidence and synchronicities. It draws you forward, and it's behooving to us to be able to interpret these flows of synchronistic and sequential events that give us are constantly giving us clues. And it's just a matter of being able to, zero in on it. And, anytime that you go to a place like the Uinta Basin, the place that everybody knows about and everybody is focused on is the place that you're probably least likely to see something cool.
Wow. So what is it that's going on at the other places that you were that you mentioned then? I mean, because I assume you've been investigating those places then.
Not really. I have
slacking off or what? What's going on?
Fuck yeah, man. Shit,
his truck broke down. It had 300,000 miles on it.
Shit, man. I'm almost 65 years old. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm helping the young bucks out. I'm giving away my my experience and my whatever it is that I can help people out with. And anybody that wants to learn from my mistakes and from my where I got it right, just read my books or listen to dozens of podcasts and radio shows that I've been on, and the 100+ TV show segments I've been on. And you'll get a good sense of where I'm coming from. I really feel that there are no experts, really. There's just people that other people call experts, and then they buy into it, and they buy their own into their own press releases and stuff. I'm not like that. People are constantly trying to get me to claim this or claim that, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know shit from Chinola. I'm making this up as I go. I think I happen to ask, maybe better quality questions. And to me, an expert is someone that asks questions that I go, wow, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think of asking that? Okay, that's what an expert is. It's someone who knows they don't know and comes up with creative questions.
I think the big thing for me is having been a trial lawyer, and I did wrongful death cases. I did all kinds of commercial litigation. I did serious criminal trials, and we would bring in experts. And the thing is about the expert is being able to ask the right questions. And the thing about your field in the field of cryptozoology or paranormal research or ufology is about being able to ask the right questions. And
exactly,
you and I think sometimes people go into this field wanting a certain result, so they tailor their questions to try to elicit a certain result instead of being objective.
Right.
Instead of saying,
exactly.
Hey, listen, you know what? I want to know, but I want to really know. I don't want somebody to just tell me and I just leap to conclusion. I'm not going to cast aspersions on certain TV shows, but there's clearly, you watch some of these TV shows and the way they ask the questions and then they immediately jump to the conclusion, well, it had to be a Bigfoot. And you're just like, well, no, come on. You know what I mean? You know, let's ask some hard questions. And
Believe me, I know what you're talking about.
there you go. So the art of cross-examination, you know, and being a trial lawyer, to be able to cross-examine someone artfully without insulting them, to say, okay, I know that you said this is what you said, but, and then you go through some stuff to try to poke some holes in what they say. And
it's a skill, man.
It's a skill. And you're not necessarily trying to discredit someone, but if you don't ask the hard questions, then you're not really doing a service to the field and to the body of work. Look, I think secretly, you know, most people want to believe that there's a Bigfoot. You know, it's fun. It's an exciting thing. But it's disingenuous to not ask the right questions and just to be presumptive.
Well, Chris, let me ask you the hard question then. All your research out there, like, what do you think is going on? Like, what do you think the cause of some of that stuff at Skinwalker Ranch is? Like, what do you think's really happening?
Well, I think there are no simple, knee-jerk, one-size-fits-all answers for any of it. It is multifarious. It's a constellation of separate agendas, separate players, separate methodologies, separate structures for manifestation. All these things are coming together, flinging together, and bouncing off one another.
For example, there's no nexus that a extinct primordial direwolf has any connection with
exactly
a spaceship that has an aperture that opens up and you can look through it, and even though it's daytime here, it's nighttime there. They're not related. There's something about this particular piece of property that is pulling all of these things together like a magnet.
Well, that brings up the whole subject of, you know, rents and the fabric of reality, portal areas, window areas, gateways. The longer I ponder this stuff and look into it, and I've actually identified an actual portal where if you sit there long enough and you monitor it, you're going to see some pretty wild stuff. I've taken world famous investigators there and blown them away. So I do have a sense that there are specific locations that may ebb and flow somewhat in terms of their physicality, how big, how small, you know, where they are in relation long and lat. I think they're localized, and they may ebb and flow somewhat, but I think they're predictable. And if you, if you go ahead and monitor those locations, I would place money. I would go to Vegas and bet on coming up with some hard data. That's why I'm involved in the UFODAP project, which is the UFO Data Acquisition Project. And even though it has the UFO acronym in it, this particular monitoring system, which is recording magnetometers, gravitometers, accelerometers, radio frequency, spectrum analyzers, complete atmospherics, plus triangulated pan tilt zoom, 36 times optical zoom cameras, high def cameras. Once you start taking the powers of observational and measurement, scientific measurement, once you bring that into play and are able, goddess willing, able to collect some real data and then replicate that data, then it's a whole new ballgame. We go from the realm of wannabe, yada, 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 okay. Whatever you say, dude. And you start throwing magnetic, gravitational, optical, and radio frequency spectrum data. And plus, we have a camera that, for nighttime sightings, will take the light source and break it into its light spectra. There's a blaze grating, which divides light into its constituent parts. Once you start throwing that kind of data out to back up a claim of an event, and then you're able to do it again, you can write a paper that could get published in Nature.
So let me ask you this, Christopher. This is one of those things that always was a burning question. The government clearly knows something's going on out there. Why doesn't the government just use its power of eminent domain, take the ranch, pay the guy the fair market value because they can, and then say, okay, the United States government now owns this world?
Or was Bigelow doing research on behalf of the government?
Well, I don't
Exactly.
know. That kind of
No.
wonder, like, why does the
You have to
government just
understand.
take it and say, okay, here we go?
Half the attraction to this material that the government has is how it can be utilized as a tool for control. The government's job is to control everybody and everything. Okay? That's what government is. It is a agreed upon system of control, and hopefully we can control our own folks, but let's go out and control everybody else on the planet too. So why create this firestorm of scrutiny and interest in something that you don't have control over? Why not let somebody else do it, and then very subtly and very cleverly maintain control over the output of information about it, this is exactly what's going on right now. Maintain, monitoring the private individuals that own the place. Maybe have an agreement with them, but maybe not.
So you think there's a guy that has an office somewhere whose job is to monitor Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh, absolutely.
Flow of information
yeah.
for the government. Mm-hmm. That's a very Orwellian type view versus a social contract. Well, we're going to consent to be governed by the government versus the government, controlling us.
Well, if you know anything about the subject of UFOs and the subject of governmental control over the information, if you've read any of the books, I'm not like Tom DeLonge. I can't say I've read them all, so I know everything. I haven't read them all, but I've read enough to know, without much room for interpretation, that, and having worked with James Fox on the movie The Phenomenon, and spoken with Jacques Vallée and some of the principles that are involved in this incredible film, you get the sense that because the government doesn't know everything, in fact, they really don't know. Well, they know way more than we do, but in the overall analysis, it's really not that much more. And because they do, and they still have questions, that means that they're still confused. And the government will never, ever admit that they don't know or that they're confused. Okay, their job is to know. Their job is to be in a place of clarity. Their job is to control the situation. Doesn't matter what it is. And they will never admit that they don't. And so I think disclosure, if you want to use that UFO term, I think disclosure is hinged on how confused you are. We're pretty confused. I mean, we have been at least for 70 years during the modern age of ufology, since Kenneth Arnold, right? June 47, Mount Rainier, 9 objects skimming across the lake like saucers on a pond or whatever. We're confused, but the government, because they know so much more, they have all the gun camera footage, radar, data, probably all sorts of magnetic and gravitational, and who knows what kind of exotic, scientific data that they've gathered. But it's obvious they don't know any more than we do. In fact, they're way more confused than we are.
That's a bold statement because I think there's a big segment of the population that believes that there really was a spacecraft that crashed in Roswell. It's sitting in a hangar.
And you think that they figured out? You think that they figured out how it works?
No, I mean
I don't know.
They just admitted in July that they have these spaceships. So I mean, maybe they're hoping somebody will come forward and say, "Well, we can help you out."
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the question is whether or not we've been able to reverse engineer some of that technology. No. I mean, the B-52 stealth bomber or whatever it is with the cloaking and all that stuff. I mean, I know we haven't reached the Klingons yet.
No,
when it comes to be able to bird of prey to cloak.
No stealth technology like that yet.
Well, I know there's a whole kind of school of thought that would say, well, we have all those secret space program advances, but since we're so far ahead of everybody else with our conventional forces, we don't need to whip that shit up because, that's our ace in the hole. And I I listen to that and I go, wait a minute. You think for a second that those, overgrown boys with those kind of toys would be able to, resist whipping that shit out? No way.
It was the whole Philadelphia experiment, wasn't it?
No, apples and oranges.
Well, what before we man, we could go on forever.
Oh, I said
down
this.
Yeah. But so I want to ask you: is that doing all this research for, 30-some years? Is that how long you said you've been doing it? 30, 40 years?
I've been reading the books for 50.
Okay, so what's the one mystery that you would love to either solve yourself or see solved before you run out of time?
Other than the cattle mutilations, and stream of consciousness.
Yes. Yeah. What's the one other cryptid or mysterious thing that you've run across or researched?
I've never really thought about that. I don't have, some sort of top 10 list or anything like that. I think the thing that intellectually excites me the most, because of the implications of how important particular answers would overlay into other subjects, and of course, that is the cattle mutilation question. The other thing is, I think life after death. I think our most likely breakthrough in the paranormal will somehow occur in conjunction with a notorious haunted site. I think that the fact that these places are location specific, not like UFOs where you have to always be chasing around hoping you're in the right place. I have been to some of the most haunted sites in North America, and I went into it as a cameraman, as a audio guy, as a keeper of the evidence to maintain the evidence chain, and I was like, I can't believe you guys are into this, and a year and a half later, I was blown away, and I'm, looking at analyzing EVPs and some of the atmospheric data and other things going, there's no way you can explain this. So I think location-specific haunted sites offer what may be the quickest way to get to the next level of understanding with the paranormal. That being said, that's my runner-up. Of course, my big one is UFODAP, and having hard data monitoring nodes set up in a coordinated network around the planet. We've already got a half a dozen systems up, And I think that the cumulative effect of monitoring hotspot areas with scientific instruments and then being able to effectively analyze that data is going to prove very, very, I think, productive. And to me, hard data monitoring will allow the data to overwhelm the mystery. And that if I've helped in any way, shape, or form, it's trying to synthesize consciousness with phenomena, paranormal stuff, and then the cattle stuff, recognizing the importance, and then UFODAP. I say I'm not a ufologist, but if I was, I would do a thing like UFODAP.
No, when is that, like, the information that you guys have been collecting from that? Like, when is that going to be something that is going to be released, or you're going to share, or anything like that?
Well, it's a it's a cooperative effort. I have some UFO data people who are going to be our analytical arm. They're PhD professors at Ohio State and Northwestern, and I'm going to let the experts decide what to publish and when to publish. I'll have my input, of course, but these people are educated and trained to do this type of thing, and I really don't have I don't really want to have anything to do with that in terms of the minutia of publishing. It's just I'm having too much fun doing other shit. So,
well, speaking of that,
I'm working on a TV show right now. So I got a whole development process going on with the media. I've finally, I've turned down 3 attempts to do a TV show, and I found the right fit with the right kind of attitude, and I've made some stipulations that it can't be done a certain way. It's got to be done this way, and so far they're making all the right noises. So,
well, that'll be something we can obviously look forward to. But and I want to give you a chance to promote kind of you're talking about you're having too much fun doing other stuff. Give the audience a little taste of what is coming out. Well, tomorrow as we're recording this, it'll be a couple. It'll be already out by the time this is played. But
actually on tomorrow, which will be Thursday the 17th, I have a corroboration coming out on the first and only solo album by Kevin Godley, the famous video producer, who was drummer for 10cc for years, and art school guy. He's 75, and he figured, hey, before he kicks the bucket, he wants to at least get his solo album out there. He doesn't play any instrument besides percussion, so back in 2017, he said, I want to do an album. He put out a request for people to send him grooves and music, without melodies and vocals and stuff. And, out of the blue, I got a call. Hey, I really like your gloriously nasty, dirty groove, Osama bin Laden. And I said, wow, that's cool. And he said, well, send me everything all separated into tracks. Well, out of all the SD cards of all my projects that I have, that was one of the first ones, and I lost it. So I had to re-record the song in one day, everything first takes, and he put down, a really cool, a very dystopian, pessimistic song called "The Suicide of Angels," and it's coming out on the 17th on Muscle Memory is the name of the album. Kevin Godley. He's the one that did all the great MTV videos, the really good ones, of Michael Jackson, U2, Sting. Herbie Hancock Rocket. Remember that? It was one of the that was the first one that he and Lal Cream did. I've been a huge 10cc fan for years, and to get him to get in touch with me and then do some Skype calls with him and pick his brain a little bit and have some fun. It was a real that's definitely a bucket list type thing for me. And he had hundreds and hundreds of submissions, and actually I'm going to be the secret track on the album. I'm number 13, I think. He would have put me in the original 12, but he said he couldn't come up with he had a melody, but he couldn't come up with vocals. And then he finally did, and we rushed it, in the last week before he had to master the album. And it's coming out on, it would have been a couple days ago, I guess, the 17th. And it's called Muscle Memory, Kevin Godley. And then, I've got tons of cool stuff going on. You can always go to UFODAP, D-A-P, UFODAP.com and find out about the monitoring setup and everything. I've got a kind of half-assed website, Our Strange Planet. I haven't added anything in a while, but it's there's a lot of really cool stuff there. And keep. I'm going to be on every episode pretty much of Strange Evidence. I think planning on coming out to do a whole 2-day shoot. I was on quite a number of them last year. So I'm still doing some media stuff and everything, but I'm trying to take it easy. I burnt the candle at both ends and with a blowtorch in the middle for decades.
So if I bought the rights to your story, could I name it "The Things We Do for Love"? How cocaine
that's a song,
a pickup truck got me through the paranormal.
Okay. Hold on. That's the song that Kevin Godley and Lal Cream said. That's it. We quit the band.
That's the song.
I like the song. I think it's one of the best pop songs ever.
Construction and gigging and Bigfooting and hardcore drug usage. The things you did for love. The things you did for love.
Hey, as a song,
I wouldn't say hardcore drug usage. I didn't talk about the psychedelics.
Hey, listen, he's heard that plenty of times in the courtroom.
The psychedelics.
Plenty of times.
Well, hey, as a songwriter, I know how special it is to get on an album like that, especially somebody that you admire, and I know how tough it is to get on that a project like that. So to me, that's almost as cool.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, man. It's almost that, especially when that's probably something you never expected to do.
It was 3 years ago, and I just said, what the hell? I'll send him a couple things, and to get that, mea culpa, man. Hey, it's my fault. I would have gotten back to you a lot sooner, but I didn't have anything to share. I wanted to do something with it, but it hasn't been until now that I've come up with something. Are you interested? And he's a really sweet guy. He's not happy with what's going on in the world right now, and rightly so. Either am I. These last 4 years have been. Anyway, I mean, I
gotta be honest.
I could digress.
I think it's time to call it a day.
Yeah.
But hey, we'll definitely put a link up to that song when we get this episode out, because I want everybody to.
Suicide of Angels.
Suicide. That's a great title.
The song is kind of spooky. I said, well, instead of I was driving my car, how about we say I was flying my car? That will make it futuristic and give people some hope. And he said, no. I said, I'm an optimist. He says, nope, I'm a pessimist. Forget it. Nope. I'm driving my car, bro. And it breaks down, and all the angels start committing suicide. And it's like, whoa, okay.
That sounds like it has sync potential in a horror movie. Maybe.
All right. Well, hey, Christopher, we appreciate you having you on. Very interesting. For those out there who don't know a lot about Skinwalker Ranch, just a crazy thing. Pick up some, and we could talk 5 hours on it. It's just one of those weird supernatural hotspots that just has no rational explanation, short of indigenous people have said, "Look, don't go there; it's taboo."
We licked the tip of the Uinta Basin iceberg there, bro.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, hey, we appreciate it, and stay safe there. We know you're going to get crammed with more snow than I want to see. So
All right.
I'm
Go
getting
build a
hit as
snowman.
we speak. Take care, guys.
all right,
Take it easy.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.